There are many involved looking out for agriculture and partnering to keep growers and the industry moving forward and staying competitive. One of those people is Chuck Lippstreu. With all the challenges going on in government, we felt it would be good to get an update on the hot issues facing growers and the Michigan ag industry. Here today with us to share his experiences and thoughts as he works both in Lansing and in Washington, D.C. on a daily basis. President of the Michigan Agri-Business Association, Chuck Lippstreu.
Excellent. Hey, can you all hear me okay? I turned my mic on successfully. That's step one. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I'm Chuck Lippstreu. I lead the Michigan Agri-Business Association. We're going to spend around half an hour talking about everybody's favorite topic, politics. Yay. This is going to be great. No, listen, the goal today is to maybe take what you're seeing in the press. I know you all are, you watch the news, you read the press. Let's drill down a little bit and think about what are some actionable insights and steps that you as growers and industry representatives can use to your advantage, and how are we thinking about the policy landscape. So I really want to get beyond, we'll have a few headlines up here today, but my goal is to leave you walking out of here with maybe a couple of action steps that you can take in your community, and also maybe a couple things that you won't read in the press that could lend some, maybe a little bit extra layer of knowledge to what we're seeing out there. But first, let's see if I can make the thing work. There we go. First, let's take a moment to reflect on how lucky we are to have the wheat industry that we have in Michigan and the Michigan Wheat Program that is such an important part of strengthening that industry, and the partnership of our land-grant university and some of the leading researchers on earth, frankly, when it comes to wheat and a wide variety of other agricultural topics. I don't say this lightly. So the Michigan Agri-Business Association, what we're doing every day, we depend on the support of around 300 businesses and organizations operating across the agricultural system. We've got a few members here today that are in the private sector, but we also partner very closely with farm organizations and others that have some stake in the future of the industry. The Michigan Wheat Program, Jody, the board of directors have been great partners, and I want you all to know that when you support the wheat program, you're also supporting some of the work we're about to talk about in terms of navigating federal and state issues. So I want to just take a minute. We don't take this lightly. It's really important for us. And then in addition, with some of our researchers, a couple of whom are on the program today, these are folks that attend our meetings, that help connect with the millers and others in the industry, giving their time and thoughts and resources to help us be successful. Again, we don't take that for granted, and it is greatly appreciated. I know Dr. Pennington and Dr. Olson have both been on the program today, but we know that's a really important partnership and one that we never take for granted. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? The landscape. Wow, it's a different situation today, isn't it? There is a lot going on. So, as an organization, right, our goals are to make sure that we're standing up for pro-agriculture policy, that we're setting people up and businesses up to be successful. What does that mean? What are we trying to accomplish every day as we deal with policy leaders at the state and federal, sometimes at the local level? First, your ability to do what you do, the ability to operate, placing trust in America's farmers to get the job done, placing trust in rural businesses to do what's right for the food system. Because we know that you're out there every day trying to do the best you can, following the rules, advancing the agricultural system. We want to be sure that you have the ability to do what you do. Second, open and fair commercial systems. We're going to talk a lot about that here in a minute. Making sure that we have open commerce so we can go sell stuff. Very simple. And overall, when issues come up that could threaten the success of agriculture, that we're standing up for the industry and maybe putting the brakes on those types of ideas. And in addition, when we hear from the industry, whether it's a grower group or one of our business members, that something might help, right? There's something we might want to go do that would help advance the industry, then we're standing up for that too, a successful ag sector. All right, so when we think about the landscape we're operating in right now, and we're going to talk mostly about the federal government today, a little bit about state government as well. Two totally different playing fields. Federal government, we know we've had a big shift here in November, right? Republicans had a big, big night in November. The Republicans run the White House. The Republicans control the U.S. Senate. And the Republicans control the U.S. House of Representatives. Unified Republican control. So if the Republicans in Congress can all agree on something, and those Republicans in Congress can also agree with President Trump, they can pretty much run the table, right? They can go do what they want to do if they can all agree. Sometimes they don't always agree, right? Just because they're all Republicans doesn't mean they always agree. Same for the Democrats. When they have unified control, sometimes they don't agree within the party. But that's the deal with the federal government. Here in state government, again, big shift in November. So for the last 2 years, so before the last election, in 2023 and 2024, who ran the government in Michigan? The Democrats. The Democrats ran the whole thing. Control the House, control the Senate, and the governor, of course, is a Democrat. First time in my lifetime that occurred. Unified Democrat control of the government. First time in 43 years when that happened. Today, Republicans have flipped the House. So we have a Republican speaker, Matt Hall, from the Kalamazoo area, and Republicans control that chamber with a few votes to spare. In the Senate, Democrats still control it. It wasn't up in November. They have a one-vote majority. Democrats have a one-vote majority in the Michigan Senate. We'll come back to that in a little bit. All right, so we're going to first zoom in on the federal government, and I want to talk to you about Congress. I want to talk to you about the Michigan delegation, and I want to talk about some of these issues we are seeing in the news and what they might mean for you as wheat farmers. So our Michigan delegation to Congress is a good one. We have members across the state from both parties who understand what you do and value what you do, and in some cases, understand what they don't know, right? What they need to learn about agriculture. And we have a couple examples up here. Here are 4 people that if you don't know who they are, I suggest that you maybe spend 10 minutes sometime on the internet, just read their bios, get to know them a little bit. And in the spirit of being a bit interactive, we're going to go left to right here and see if anybody knows these folks. Here on the left, Lisa McLean, the number 4 House Republican, someone who is an absolute rising star in the Republican Party in the House, is on her 3rd or 4th term. Right? So fairly new by House standards, but is the Republican caucus chairwoman in the U.S. House of Representatives. Really important voice for Michigan, especially in this, under this circumstance in the federal government. Moving to our right, John Molinar. John Molinar also rising star in the House and holds a really important and interesting position in the current environment. He is the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. So he is in a unique role when it comes to foreign policy, trade, exports, and how we navigate that really complex question of how we treat our biggest global rival and also try to keep commercial chains open. Now on to the Democrats. Moving to our right, new one. Kristen McDonald-Rivet, former state senator, served in the Michigan Senate, won election to what was Rep. Kilde's seat in November. Bucked the trend, right? Republicans had a really big night. Most Republicans in close races, like this district, were successful. McDonald-Rivet won close election and is now a freshman in the House and serves on the House Agriculture Committee. So we continue to have a voice on House Agriculture. That is important for us. It ensures that Michigan will have a direct voice during the upcoming Farm Bill discussions. And then, over here on the right, Alyssa Slotkin. Moderate Democrat, comes out of the national security community, served on the House Agriculture Committee. Again, someone who was able to buck that trend in November and is now still in Congress as a result. Even when Republicans control the government, we are working with Democrats. When Democrats control the government, we work with Republicans. I caution everybody not to get into the thinking that Republicans will always have unified control of the federal government. Just like when Democrats had control of state government, we were telling everyone, hey, look, this isn't going to last forever, right? Politics is a cyclical thing. And so one of the guiding principles for us is we're going to work with both parties pretty much all the time to make sure that we are always able to get into the room and advocate for you all. All right, we're going to go through 2 or 3 issues. Tariffs. This is really interesting. So we saw the administration obviously come out strong with the their tariff proposals centered on Canada, Mexico, and China here in the last few weeks. 30-day pause. I don't have to read you through, I think, that whole thing. We're coming up on the 30 days. It's next week. What's going to happen? The president said yesterday or this morning, one of the two, they're on a schedule. They're going to happen. 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico. Pulled that this morning. Tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go forward. Who thinks it's going to happen? Maybe, it might. This president is serious, right? I mean, one of the things that stands out to me about President Trump is during campaign season, all the stuff you're seeing in the press right now, he said he was going to do it. He went around the country campaigning, saying, we're going to do the following things. We're going to have tariffs. We're going to go after the federal government in terms of how it's organized. We're going to look at federal spending. And you can go down the list, right? He went around saying all of these things very specifically during campaign season. Now he's the president. And what is he doing? He's doing exactly what he told everyone he would do, and the American people showed up and voted for him and gave him his strongest margins ever of his 3 campaigns, right? Now he's doing this stuff. Are we going to end up with tariffs on Canada and Mexico? Maybe. It's entirely possible. Is it possible that we end up with a 30-day extension and the Canadian and Mexican governments coming out with some more sort of, movement, if you will? Maybe. Could we have tariffs go on for 36 hours and make everybody's day really exciting and then come off again? Yep, maybe. Could you have tariffs go on for 45 minutes? Absolutely. Like, that's a very real thing that could occur, right? Or we could have what we had last time around, which was you had the president publicly state something was going to happen, and we as an industry are out there saying, all right, let's all wait and see what the paper says, right? The details matter of this stuff. And then it sort of got rolled back over the ensuing 48 hours. So I say this to suggest that we don't quite know what's going to happen with the tariff discussion, and don't let anybody tell you it is not a complex one. There's a lot going on all at once. So we pulled some, this is about a week ago I pulled some of these things, but they still stand today. Colombia, you all saw what happened with Colombia, right? The Colombians and the Trump administration disagreed on the migrant policy issue. The administration came out and said, we're going to have a tariff on Colombia. What happened? The government of Colombia shifted position overnight. First, it came out and said, we're not going to stand for this. We're not going to let Trump push us around. And then overnight, they sort of reversed course because they looked at the picture, right? So that was a win for the administration. In addition, Mexico. There's serious problems at the US-Mexico border. No secret. Down at the bottom right, I put a 2023 on there just so folks are clear. This is a year old. It is not happening right now. But because of the security situation at the southern border, we have had circumstances 3 times in the last 18 months where rail cars were stopped moving into or out of Mexico. Big problem for any exporter into Mexico, right? That's a national security issue and a commercial issue. That's got to get solved somehow. And we saw the government of Mexico, as a concession, sent 10,000 Mexican National Guard troops to the southern border. Is that going to solve the issue? No. Is it a step? Does it show us that the administration is willing to use tariffs as a lever to get concessions? Yes, it does, right? You can read through some of these other ones. Basically, the bottom line of these headlines are the following 3 things. And this is what I would challenge you all to keep in mind during this administration. Live in the gray area. Understand that some of these policy proposals that are very new can have some positive elements, potentially, and some negative elements at the same time. Don't let anybody tell you that it's 100% cut and dry. Everything the administration does is positive. Everything the administration does is negative. Don't do it. It's hard, but you benefit from looking into the sort of the balance here. So 3 things I believe can be true at the same time. Number 1, the president is going to continue to use tariffs as either a threat, a negotiating tool, or potentially an actual action that they take, right? To gain leverage and achieve policy goals. They've been very clear about this. No one should be surprised about it, right? That's the first thing. That's true. The second is, It's already worked in some cases. Colombia, Mexico. You could argue that Canada had some concessions. They made some announcements around that 30-day mark. It is unclear to us exactly what the goal is with Canada right now. And we do have some concern around what could happen if you end up putting a 25% tariff on Canada. But with Mexico, it's fairly clear. With Colombia, it was very clear. And they've had some success. That's the second thing. And the third thing, which can also be true if we end up in a trade war with Canada, our #1 export market, basically across the board, that is a bad thing. That wouldn't be good. It goes back to the question of whether it's going to happen. So what you're seeing right now from an agricultural industry perspective is, in general, organizations are giving this president and this administration some space to leverage its strategy. It's a new strategy. We recognize that. We've also been fairly clear about the facts. We need Canada as a trading partner in Michigan agriculture. We're about to open the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It's going to be the newest point of entry between the US and Canada. It'll remain the newest for quite some time. It's going to put Michigan on the map, keep Michigan on the map as a hub for trade and transit between the US and Canada. It's a big deal. So we do not want to see a trade war occur with Canada. We don't necessarily want to see a trade war occur with Mexico, our #2 export market for agricultural products. Our hope is that all of this can be avoided. We don't know whether it will be. But from an ag industry perspective, we're sharing the facts out there, right? Trade war will be bad. We also recognize that the administration is going to continue to use tariffs as a negotiating tool to achieve foreign policy goals. All right, we're going to come back to that at the end, but just quickly on a few other things. Same deal here. Understand the complexity and pause before you declare a policy proposal by this administration to be 100% good, perfect idea, more of it, or 100% bad, this is terrible. And there's a couple examples. The first is the federal employee communications that are going out. You all read about this, right? I know that some of you know or are related to or are neighbors with federal employees working at FSA offices or NRCS offices or the RD state office. USDA has already taken huge cuts in its staffing numbers over the last 10 years. We were cutting people when I was there 10 years ago because funding was going down. If you end up zeroing out an FSA office because the staff leave, that's not great. At the same time, are there efficiencies to be found in government? Absolutely, 1,000%. So this is an administration that's trying to think through these things. We want to avoid unintended consequences of that. And I would caution you, don't go down the road of every federal employee is a waste of resources. Every federal office is a waste of taxpayer dollars. That's not accurate to say. But don't let anybody tell you we can't find efficiencies in the federal government, right? Both things can be true. And that's tough to say, but both things can be true. Same deal on the federal funding. This is a question where we have some concern about the speed with which funding will be released following this review, right? There are a number of programs, you all know this, right? There's a review going on of federal payments to make sure that payments align with the administration's priorities. This is one where we're not going to learn exactly how every program plays out, probably for a little while. That's all right. We do want to be sure farmer payments continue to flow, certain infrastructure money continues to move. There were a number of different investments that have been announced but not paid out that would benefit the agricultural industry directly and are totally defensible in every way. We want to see those things move. But every administration also, on the flip side, has the ability and the authority to go look at what it's spending money on. That's ongoing right now. That's going to continue to be an issue over the next few weeks and probably months. Switching gears a little bit, two other quick issues of the federal government, and I'll make sure I save some time for questions. I've even got a clock down here to make sure I don't mess up and use all the time. This is an easy one, but I want to make sure you know this remains a priority for us and other ag groups in the last Congress and now continuing in this Congress. We're going to be sure we're standing up for your ability to use proven crop protection products and other ag innovation. This has been a challenge for years, right? Attacks on the pesticide industry, attacks on GMOs, attacks on overall use of new technology that's being used to feed people around the world. We choose to live with the science and make sure that our policy leaders understand there's a huge amount of science that goes into this. You all know that. But it's on us to help educate them about that. We don't hold it against legislators at any level for having tough questions about things like pesticides. I would if I didn't work in the agriculture industry. Wouldn't you? It's okay to have tough questions. But we need to be sure we're emphasizing for them the level of rigorous science that goes into the production of new ag technology, and especially for pesticides. Once there are new products out there, these are reviewed for years by nonpartisan career scientists working at the EPA. Another great example of an agency, an office, that we've supported full funding for years. We don't want to see the Office of Pesticide Programs at the EPA get zeroed out or have all of their people leave, because they're the ones that apply sound science to new innovation that's delivered to the farm gate ultimately. I know I don't have to convince you of all this. I want you to know we're working on it. It's a top priority for us. Farm Bill. We can get into Farm Bill during Q&A. I would just offer, you all, I think, stay on top of the news around Farm Bill. Last Congress, you had divided government, right? So Democrats in the Senate and Republicans in the House could not reach agreement by the end of last year over what to do about the Farm Bill, so they extended it again by 1 year. Obviously, we need a Farm Bill that goes beyond 1 year and isn't just a straight extension. There's a lot of people working on that. I think there's a chance for a Farm Bill to get done this year. I think that's sort of the sentiment in DC, is that with unified control, it's possible it will get done. But again, that would take, it's not a given, right? A couple watch-outs. One, you are going to have continued pressure from budget hawks. So we think back, for any farm policy nerds out there, there's got to be a few of you. You remember what happened in 2013? We were going to have the 2013 Farm Bill. My wife already lived here. I was in DC, and I wanted to move. I was going to move the day after the Farm Bill got done. And it was going to pass the House, and we were going to be done with it. And what happened? Does anybody happen to remember what happened to the 2013 Farm Bill on the House floor? The Tea Party happened to it. Remember the Tea Party? They decided they wanted to separate out nutrition programs from the House Farm Bill. Make it two bills. What happened? No Farm Bill got done, because you don't get the votes if you do that. So obviously we're concerned that you could see something like that happen again. That would cause problems for Farm Bill passage. That said, there is some momentum there. There's a series of hearings happening right now to sort of begin the process again. Tomorrow, Wednesday, today's Tuesday, Wednesday, tomorrow, the U.S. Senate Ag Committee is going to have a hearing on the next Farm Bill. One of the many people testifying at that is our Ag Director, Tim Boren. You can tune into that tomorrow midday. You can Google it for the link. But this process is going to continue. I would say there is hope for a multi-year Farm Bill. All right. Things we're telling people to remember about the federal government. This is about the most active few weeks we have ever seen, at least in the last 15, 20 years, in terms of federal policy and change, right? You have so many new elements to all of this. It's even busier, I think this is fair to say, it's even busier in terms of the news cycle than it was in 2017, when nobody really knew the Trump administration and Donald Trump and how he would govern, right? There were a lot of new things happening then. Isn't it really new now? There's just a lot of new elements. Okay, things we're telling people to remember. There's not going to be an end to it. That's not a good or bad statement, it's just a fact, right? That's how this president governs. This is how this administration is going to work. It's one of the tactics and strategies they employ to achieve their policy goals. The uncertainty and the quick pivots, people aren't used to that from the federal government, right? That's happening right now. No secret. That's going to continue. So on things like tariffs, let's say we get to the 30-day mark next week, and they come out and say 30 days, another 30 days, or another 10 days, or the tariffs are going on. Again, that doesn't mean that position is not going to change quickly. Does anybody here think that the president is going to hold an Oval Office address next Wednesday at the tariff deadline and say, we thought about tariffs and we're going to stop talking about them? No, right? No. So we tell everybody, don't get focused on the deadlines and you got to focus on them from a business perspective, but just because something occurs doesn't mean the opposite thing won't occur the next day. Because this president operates, again, more rapidly and in a more unorthodox fashion than any president in history. And that's one of the reasons I would suggest, some may disagree, that he's appealing to voters, that people went and voted for him because they wanted to see something different. And so now we're going to have that going on. Think about what the long-term impacts are going to be. Try to the extent you can, and to the extent it is feasible, sometimes it's not to get totally caught up in what the news cycle is today, but think through what the long-term impacts of some of these actions will be. What are the good things? What are the bad things? And how do we make sure our voice is heard to educate policymakers around what those are, right? So like on the federal employee thing right now, we're saying to legislators exactly what I just said to you. You know, certainly there's efficiencies in the federal government and the federal workforce. No secret about it. Are there bad federal employees? Or rather, are they all bad? No, not at all. And some of you know them, many of you know them. And they work really hard, and they want to do a good job. So we caution against punishing everybody in federal service, right, in the name of a sound policy goal, making sure we're efficient as a government. Both things can be true. Again, that's a tough one, but they can be. Let's talk about the state for 5 minutes, and we'll answer some questions. Divided government. Republicans in the House, Democrats in the Senate have got to be able to agree, and the governor has to be able to agree to get anything done. Can it happen? It can happen. Why can I say that with confidence? The Earned Sick Time Act. If you are not familiar with the Earned Sick Time Act and you employ more than 0 people on any basis, if you employ an intern or somebody, if you have the neighbor comes and helps you out for 3 hours a week, you need to be aware of this. I think many of you are, right? So you had the Earned Sick Time Act without taking us through the whole journey. This was something that needed to get fixed. We were headed for a cliff last Friday that would have caused major, major problems for virtually every single person in this room. And the only way for anything to be done about it was for the Speaker of the House, Matt Hall, the Senate Democrats, led by Majority Leader Whitney Brinks and Sam Singh, the floor leader, and the governor all to agree. And they did. Did they fix every problem that we had with this policy? No. Are there new requirements that are going into place that affect everybody here in some way? Yes. I'll just leave it with Earned Sick Time Act, because I know many of you have probably been following this. Number one, it shows us that the legislature can agree on things. The Speaker and the Senate Democrats and the governor can work together. That's very good to know and see. And number two, if you have any employees, I mean it, I want you all to do some homework on Earned Sick Time Act and how it affects you. We are part of, as many of our business members here are, part of the Michigan Chamber, which has got a whole team that's been working on this for months. They are good at it. They know the law inside and out. And they just published a whole bunch of frequently asked questions applicable to any employer of any size in the state. So I want to shout them out and encourage you, if you have not spent any time thinking about the Earned Sick Time Act, send yourself a note. Please do not assume that there is any exemption that applies to you or any way that you will not be compelled to comply with it, because there are no exemptions. If you have fewer than 10 employees or 11 employees, you have until October 1st to create a plan to be compliant with this new law. If you have more than 10 employees, it applies to you right now. Now there's some period of time to get up to speed, but do your homework. If this is the first time you're hearing about the Earned Sick Time Act, please see me afterward, go on our website, go on the Chamber website, just make sure you know that's moving. In addition, this is not written down yet anywhere. It is public. The Director of Agriculture briefed the MEAP Advisory Committee on it, so it's not a state secret, but I want everybody here to be aware that our sunset is coming up on the fertilizer tonnage and pesticide registration fees that fund the freshwater fund in Michigan. The administration has briefed industry that it's going to propose an increase to those fees of 20 cents next year on the fertilizer tonnage. So right now you pay, you know this, you pay $1.35 a ton as a tonnage tax there on fertilizer. $1 of that goes to the freshwater fund, 35 cents goes to inspection. The administration's going to be asking for 20 cent a ton increase, and then over the course of the next 4 years after that, increases of 5%, 5%, 3%, and 3%. If you total that up, 36% over 5 years. If you compound the interest, 40% or so. Now, I want to be very clear. We support industry contributions to these programs. This goes to fund MEAP, it goes to conservation districts, it goes to the Clean Sweep program. There's all sorts of different things it funds. So we haven't taken a support or oppose position at this point. We've asked the administration to share its math and explain why a fee increase would be the only way that we could continue to deliver these programs. And we expect the administration to communicate more about that coming up. I just want you all to be aware that's going to be a big issue this year as part of the budget process and as we get close to December 31st. What we don't want to see happen is for these fees not to be reauthorized and for a really important funding stream for a bunch of very important stewardship programs to go away. We don't want to see that at all. But we do caution against out-of-control fees on tonnage that's paid by all of you at the retail point of sale or on pesticide registrations, which are already some of the highest in the nation. I want to say Michigan right now is the number 6 highest state in the nation for pesticide registration costs. 2 issues that, one is happening right now. This is happening today, Earned Sick Time Act. Again, 30 minutes today will benefit you greatly. Tomorrow, fertilizer tonnage, we'll stay in touch with all of our stakeholders. Nothing we're asking you to do today, and one we all need to learn more about before we take a hard position on it. But I want you to know that it's happening. It's going to be a really big issue that will affect your bottom line here coming up, whatever happens. We're going to really go quick through these things. How can you make a difference? We'll make sure these slides get out to Jody and the team, but a few press outlets we read. I also spend time on Twitter occasionally, just to make sure we have a sense of what's going on. I would encourage you to have an X account, follow it. Just do it in moderation. It'll drive you nuts if you're not careful. I also encourage everybody to make sure you know who your local leaders are, your state rep, your state senator. Go to their coffee hours. Go say hi to them. They want to meet you, right? They're typically very approachable people. Some of you know your state reps and your state senators. For some of you, of course, as you may know, you are awaiting a special election to learn who your next state senator will be if you're in the former McDonald-Rivet seat. But just by way of example, I live in Grand Rapids. It's not a rural area, but our rep, Phil Skaggs, he had a coffee hour a year ago, and I went down to see him just to introduce myself, right, as a constituent, not as the agribusiness guy. Well, he just got appointed to the Agriculture Committee in the House. He doesn't have a lot of background about agriculture, right? But we do have a relationship. We went down and said hello. You never know where people will end up, and it is good to get to know them. So I encourage you to get to know your local reps. And last but not least, some of you had to see this slide for the last 5 years, as long as I've been in charge of the association. I will not stop putting it up. Anthony Bourdain said, I don't have to agree with you to like you or respect you. We deal with plenty of people with whom we have major policy disagreements. We treat them with respect, and we understand that they are, by and large, bright people who are there for the right reasons. They're trying to make a difference on behalf of our state and our nation. We give them credit for that, but we will hold them accountable for ideas that we disagree with, right? We can be advocates without going after people personally. And with that, I appreciate the chance to be with you. And did I stick to time close enough to do questions, or did I?
Yeah, we can do a couple questions.
All right, I saw one down here, so I want to make sure yeah, go ahead.
In December, there was a funding package that passed, and so there was driving marketing assistance, and then there was some stuff also tied to funding for corn base acres and probably some other crops. Is the corn funding being held? Or
this is the federal, I forget the name for it, but basically the MAP FMD equivalent, the export promotion funding that was.
There was marketing.
Oh, disaster payments. Okay, so the question is, what farm payments are on hold and what farm payments are moving at this time? I can't speak to the specific disaster programs. I know that Secretary Rollins just said, like yesterday or the day before, that they're going to start moving EQIP funds and some other NRCS money. I don't know specifically to the disaster money. Here's what I think is likely to occur. I think that as USDA does its review, most farm payment programs are likely to be released if they've already been approved by Congress. They're with the administration. There are some programs that we have questions around, and you can go read about some of these. I would call out the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities. Some of your businesses and you as growers participate in this. That one remains on hold, and one that we're tracking very closely. National grower groups are as well, and that's one that I do think is uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen with it. But it is sending quite a bit of money into farm country right now through both the private sector and the grower community. One more question? One more question. Up in the front.
On the steel one, what is Trump's idea about putting the tariff on steel? Is it to stop steel coming into the US and for you to use US steel? Because back in the UK, our biggest export is the US. So what our government has now done has agreed to pay that tariff to keep our steel industry going, so it will not stop that export.
So what's the Trump, the question was what is the Trump administration strategy here with these steel and aluminum tariffs? Far be it from me to say exactly what the end game is, right? And that's not a positive or negative statement. I don't know that any of this tariff stuff is, the cards have been shown yet, right? We did see steel and aluminum tariffs used by the first Trump administration as one of its levers, right? Brings along some threat of retaliation. And certainly the UK market is one that Michigan historically has very strong ties into. That may be changing here the last few years, I think it's fair to say, but it's one where we know that the UK is a potential export market in greater capacity for Michigan-grown products because history shows that to be true. What is the administration aiming to achieve specifically with the steel and aluminum tariffs or any other tariffs it might come out with? Time will tell, right? We're not quite sure yet. I would not expect them to roll that back now that it's policy to roll back anytime soon. So.
Yeah, I just was wondering what the strategy is. Is it to try and keep it home within the US so that the US buy home products, which I can see is a good thing.
Sure.
Back in the UK, we've tried that, but globally we know that doesn't work now. So, like the UK to help our steel industry said, we'll pay that tariff for you. So,
what is the strategy, basically?
So basically, it's not affecting the UK now because our government, all it's doing is maybe giving the US some extra money.
Which I think it is fair to say, and I want to be very careful not to speculate about what the ultimate strategy is with the administration, but one of the publicly stated pieces of the tariffs by the president has been to bring in revenue, right? And they've said, like, this is going to be a revenue stream for us in a way that it hasn't been before. So again, take that for what it's worth. Lot to play out on the tariff piece. But everybody, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and thanks to the Michigan Wheat Program and MSU both for your strong support partnership.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, sir.